In 2015, heads of government adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals to address issues of challenges to humanity. By 2019, the United Nations Secretary General called on all sectors of societies to begin to mobilize for a decade of action by 2021. But the expectations were that by 2020, societies and communities of people in various countries should have started coming up with strategies to address how they will come up with systems towards the decade of the action by 2021. And the essence was to ensure that societies begin this mobilization on 3 levels. One was the global action to see how people could secure more leadership, more resources, and smarter solutions towards achieving the SDGs by 2030. The second was local action, embedding the needed transitions in policies, in budgets, institutions, regulatory frameworks of governments, cities, and local authorities. And the last one was the people action to include by young people, the old civil societies, unions, stakeholders, and the media, to ensure that this group of people in different societies begin to push for strategies towards achieving the SDG come 2030. Welcome to the edition of the program towards Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our own specific area in this edition as we look at issues concerning the SDG 14, that is life under water. It's my pleasure also to still welcome you, Barrister Temisan Imatseye, a former Director General at the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, to dissect issues with us and review what Nigeria has been doing since 2019, and this is 2020 towards 2021. You're welcome, Barrister Imatseye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, like I mentioned, the interest is to look at the SDG 14, that is life underwater. And what is it all about? Is to look at what Nigeria, one, I would like you to talk to us on the importance of governance, what role governance plays in the strategies towards achieving the goal number 14, SDG 14, by 2030. But importantly, we are moving into the decade of action, and for us, decade of ocean science, to look at what nations are doing, and in this instance for us, what Nigeria is doing to address the issues. Under SDG 14, there are targets, but I would like today for us to actually consider the first 2 targets. The first one talks about the fact that by 2025, nations across the world should have been able to address the issue of marine pollution, to be able to address the issue of sustainable use of the oceans and the resources. And then the SDG, target 2 under SDG 14 says by 2020, which we are almost running out of, that we should be able to use sustainably. One, consider conservation and sustainably use the marine resources to be sure that all the talks about the blue economy have specific strategies and making sure that nobody is left behind. Now, these are the issues. We know some months back, specifically in March and April, there was this issue of dead fishes that were washed ashore somewhere in Bonny. In fact, the same issue repeated itself again after March. In April it happened, and then in April as well, people woke up to see a dead whale washed ashore Bonny. And up till now, we are not really certain what happened. And then we saw also that locals were harvesting the dead fishes, they also harvested the dead whale. Where is the place of governance in this as we talk about the decade of ocean science come 2021? We know 2020 is almost gone.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to come to speak to you this morning. In the first instance, we need to start to go back to what actually is the historical aspect of the issue of the blue economy you must go back to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which was the basis of the creation of the International Seabed Association, which is based in Kingston, Jamaica, and also which is also one of the bases for the creation of the International Maritime Organization, which over its time has also created the issue of safety of life at sea, which is the SOLAS Convention. So when you look at the issue of maritime pollution basically is quite wide in the sense that you have what we call MAPO. We have the MAPO Convention, for which Nigeria is not only a signatory but also has domesticated the Maritime Pollution Convention as well. So when you look at the issue of maritime pollution, you also look at the issue of the maritime pollution onto the sea and below the sea, and also goes all the way down to the seabed. Now, Nigeria being an international organization or in a country in the international community of nations, basically it's a signatory to some of these nations, so some of these conventions. By virtue of these conventions, what Nigeria effectively has done is to say, look, well, by virtue Nigeria, we have signed up to this communication, we have domesticated it, we have made it part and parcel of our local laws. But in issues relating to this matter, you deal, well, naturally with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who have the ambassadors or the High Commissioner sitting as the permanent representative on behalf of Nigeria in Kingston, Jamaica, or in London at the IMO. And then we have what we call the alternative permanent representative, which in most cases is recommended by NIMASA to the Ministry of Transport, but they become a diplomat when they are over there. So effectively, it is NIMASA that is. So NIMASA has been stated to be the designated authority on all issues relating to UNCLOS and SOLAS Convention, as the case may be. So what that basically entails is that it means that NIMASA has to expand its role. Now, what has happened over time is basically a lot of people are talking about the issue of the blue economy, which of course has to do a lot with the issue up on the seabed. If you take, for instance, now, when you look at the offshore drilling acreages, those acreages are being drilled by the IOCs, but the acreages are being allocated by the Department of Petroleum Resources, which is Ministry of Petroleum. But then the issue of drilling at the seabed is not really a responsibility of DPR, because there are conventions that govern whatever happens on the seabed. So by virtue of the international convention, the authority responsible for what happens on the seabed is therefore NIMASA. So first of all, we have to clearly demarcate the issue of governance. So until we begin to demarcate the issue of governance and begin to know all that, then NIMASA begin to step into the realm and begin to do what is necessary and what is needed. Right now, I believe what NIMASA is possibly maybe covering is the issue of maritime pollution, which is the dumping of waste on sea and then the gathering of it and the pollution of water. And then you also have the issue of conflict of responsibilities, which has to do with an organization called NOSRA, which is a National Oil Spill Response. They are a spill response. They are not a regulator as per se by virtue of an international convention. So it is an agency like NIMASA who's supposed to have 3D maps of the seabed and 3D maps of everything going on there, including all pipes that have been laid on the bottom of the seabed, and therefore be able to monitor and set guidelines and regulation as to how those pipelines are being regulated. So what we now face a situation right now is that we have targets which are supposed to be met, but already as it stands, and my understanding is quite clear, the rules of governance have not been clearly demarcated. So you then have the issue of collecting of data. So how do you collect the data when you have not actually taken responsibility of what your roles are going to be? So the expectation quite nicely is that NIMASA is supposed to go in and take charge, and then by virtue of that, setting up guidelines and setting up reporting processes where the IOCs are going to be reporting on what is happening on the seabed to NIMASA, which they can onwards transmit onto the United Nations by virtue of the SDGs, so that they can meet up with that. So that is the way to collect information. Now you talk about the issue of fisheries and coming out. That is a pure maritime pollution issue. So something must have happened at the high seas that led those fishes to die. And it's either, if for so much of those fishes to have died, it means that possibility, the oxygen was taken out of it. And what could have caused that? Possibly an underwater pipeline leak, which necessarily you would not see it as oil. It could possibly be gas. So what gas may have done was that basically maybe there had been a slight leakage of gas, which may have just taken away the oxygen from the water, which have allowed the fish to suffocate, and they all just basically died in droves. So that could be a possibility, because one cannot begin to understand why so many fishes and a certain species of them would just die at so much and then just be washed ashore, including to whatever the case may be. So the issue of maritime pollution is, it's, first of all, we have to clearly demarcate by virtue of law and international convention of who is clearly responsible for these roles. And it's only by that Nigeria can begin to gather up the data they require for them to begin to put forward to the IMO, which onwards goes to the United Nations as to meet up their SDG requirement. But in addition to that, you must also realize that there's also the AIMS strategy, which is the African Integrated Maritime Strategy, which is a 2050 strategy for us to take care of our blue economy. So that is very much in play in the African Union. But the challenge we're facing in the African Union is that there's not a coordinated approach, which is what we are discussing with the AU at the moment.
I was just going to say that, the AIM strategy of the 2050.
Yes.
I mean, you being, you were the African Ship Owners Association president.
Yes.
From that position.
Yes. We were driving it when Mrs. Zuma was at that time the African Union chairperson. We were also driving it. The African Ship Owners Association is a recognized body on board there. The AIM strategy basically has been set up. But one interesting thing that has happened now is that the African Union has basically told all African countries who are part of the AIM strategy to set up their blue economy desks, which you find out that, yes, Nigeria is now developing the blue economy desk, where I think they have a special committee which is driving the blue economy, headed by, I think, the head of MEM at the moment, Dr. Felicia Morgo. Okay. So I think they are now the ones sitting down to be able to drive it. But you see, the issue quite clearly is this, an issue of expertise. You don't just put people there who do not understand it. You don't put novices there. You need people who are able to sit down there and defend the interest of Nigeria as it relates to the blue economy. Africa is the only seabed that has not been allocated. All other international seabeds has already been allocated. But we have not sat down to understand our seabed for us to begin to allocate it out to whatever, And
I think from this explanation, there becomes now the need to look at the local action as called for by the United Nations Secretary General.
Yeah.
What communities are doing to be able to influence policies of government at the local level. Mm-hmm. Now, I mentioned earlier that locals within Bonny harvested the dead fishes. Yes. They harvested the dead whale.
Yes.
And we also understand that for the people action, young people, old people, unions, stakeholders, everybody should be in the know of what to do.
Yes.
In this instance, what should Nigeria be doing? Because those locals obviously don't understand the dangers of going to harvest dead fishes, because they obviously never knew the causes of the death of those fishes.
Yes.
But they went on to harvest. If they were in the know, if they understood what it meant.
I think what we need to look at very strongly is that one person cannot basically do the whole job. Yeah. And you must also rely on local intelligence. And local intelligence comes from the local fishermen. And local fishermen are the ones who go out there. They're the ones who are able to detect a spill. They're able to tell you that, look, we're having a challenge here, because normally we are only going 1 kilometer offshore and we're catching fishes, but we are now going deeper offshore. And the reason for this is that the fishes are going deeper because there are a lot of pollution, maybe onshore. They are the ones who have the intelligentsia, the information, which they are able to feed to the intelligentsias.
They need a kind of coordination.
That's what I'm saying. So what you need to do is to have a peer group. You need to have a peer group right now. So the peer group will basically have to do with those who are experts in microbiology, oceanography, whatever the case may be. What they need to do very quickly is also have, like what we were trying to do in NIMASA at that time, Institutes of Maritime Studies, where you are also going to set up laboratories, maybe in the different zones. This covers from all the way from River Niger all the way down to the rivers, because it's all the water. It has to do with all the waters we're talking about. And where samples are constantly being taken. And then also where you're also having a mechanism for collecting data from the local fishermen who are feeding it to you. So the information they are giving them, hey, we went to this area today, we saw this. Okay, but collect the water for us. They bring the water in. Look, there's a bit of oxygen in the water. So there has to be a way whereby you use the guys who are constantly in the ocean to feed information. These are the information that you are going to take to your institutes.
And I think such groups would also help to pass on the information to the locals in communities around the coastal areas.
Yeah, what the peer group would do basically is to set up a set of standards, a set of questionnaires, which matches the local man. The local man may not be an intelligent person, but if you ask him in his local language some certain question, you'll be surprised he can answer it better than a professor. Yeah. But that in fact he cannot speak English does not mean he's not intelligent in what he does. Yeah. So you need to be able to create a means of communication, a kind of questionnaire. What do you say? When you ask them that question, maybe in their own dialects. Somebody was telling me of some military men that were going for an exams, and they took them into the exam hall. They sat there, they could not answer any questions. They just looked at the paper and they could not answer. But the guy who was the examiner, but I know these guys know this stuff. They know this stuff. What is it? So he now just walked up to them and said, what they said? They don't understand. Then when they now asked them in the dialect they understood, they even explained it better than the question that they were being asked. That is the issue. The issue, first of all, let us not take education as solely English, literacy in English. These guys have experience in the field. So what needs to do? The peer group needs to be set up. The Institutes of Maritime Study needs to be set up, which I believe that an agency like NIMASA can put up a chair in those agencies. Yeah. And then with those agencies, you now have the people who are from oceanography or microbiology or whatever else who are members of that. Set up the lab so that what happens is that there's a constant process of collection of, you tell them how to collect the sample, they come back. So that, like, when all those fishes died, what should have happened automatically is that those fishes automatically should have been taken immediately back to these institutes where a research or an autopsy, whatever you may call it, is found out, and then basically tell you the toxicity within those fishes to therefore be able to take that back. You cannot by virtue of mouth say, because they have all died lack of oxygen, that does not mean they're not edible. They could still be edible. Huh? What could have killed them could have just been suffocation. Okay? But it could have also been that they have taken something which was toxic. So, but we cannot do that by guesswork. So the only way you can do that, there are two ways they could have handled this matter. One, what is the root cause of the death of this fish? And what is the impact of human consumption on these fishes? In fact, and I cannot see whether that was happened or it didn't happen. I cannot speak. I'm only just giving a procedural processes that should have followed.
That takes us back to a very strong requirement in the decade of ocean science that says, one, it's not just going to end with the scientists alone who will do scientific investigations, but that whatever results from their scientific investigations, they should be able to incorporate people in the humanities, in the social sciences, who will be able to analyze and tell the story as it is, so the understanding of people in their various environments.
That is correct.
And I think that is one thing that
it's a chain.
It is.
It's a chain, and you have to link the chain up. You cannot sit in University of Ife or Unilag or whatever and begin to write research studies based on whatever else. You have to gather information to form the basis of your formal analysis. Whatever is happening in Nigeria may not necessarily be what is happening in the United States or in the English Channel or in the UK or in the Pacifics or Asia.
That's very cool.
There are different waters and there are different forms of, like you said, ballast waters which has been released, or different types of enzymes that are within our waters which will not be the same thing. That's the issue of the ballast water we'll talk about. Why are they so particular about the ballast water? Why are they so particular about the level of purification of those waters, so that we are not taking some kind of enzymes from Nigerian waters and dumping it in the European waters, or taking it to the Bahamas, which has clear waters, and then suddenly their coral reefs are beginning to die because you have brought in some enzymes which are going to those areas to eat up their coral reefs. These are the issues of, this is why the blue economy is so key, because what you are finding out is that many of these safe havens are no longer safe havens, because enzymes are being picked up from areas and are being introduced in this area. So people are saying, no. We need to begin to protect our own environment as well. You guys are thinking that you are doing ballast, but you're actually coming here and dumping those enzymes here, which are actually affecting our coral reefs, which are actually killing our fishes, which are actually affecting our tourism life, that is why the whole world needs to come together, because all the oceans and seas are all interlinked together.
In fact, that's just a beautiful one, because the call is to say, what do we do in specific communities to begin to address the issue of the need to protect the marine and coastal ecosystems. Now, on one last note, can you share with us the importance of gathering data?
Well, I understand. I see where you're coming from. I'm trying not to preempt your question. The problem we have in Nigeria is basically we're still an analog system, and what happens right now in our civil service system is that basically we have volumes of files. So a volume goes up to maybe 100 pages or 200 pages. And when that volume gets to a certain point, you open the second volume, open the third volume, so by the time you open 4 or 5 or 6 volumes, at the end of that stage, when the volumes are getting too much, you send them to archives. And in most cases, when it gets to archives, between you and I, we know sometimes we see our SUA people. it becomes our SUA paper and whatever the case. That is years of gathering. So what is happening now? And I found out that in the UK and the United States now. Why have the UK and the United States been able to take charge of their system? They basically digitalize it. And in digitalizing it, every arm of government is talking to each other. So you can go to the UK now and tap Mr. Temisan Imatseye's name, and they will tell you that, well, Mr. Temisan Imatseye came into UK at so and so dates. He rented a car and paid with his credit card at so and so date. He went to this hotel and paid with his card at so and so date. Yeah. So, by virtue of the digital economy, they can tell you where I have been. And in so doing, they can also predict what I will do next. Because they will use the understanding of your system. So that is what we need to do in Nigeria. What needs to happen almost immediately as an emergency. As a matter of fact, what needs to happen now is that government needs to stop. Stop where we are. Get all the documents which we have, irrespective of whether, most especially places like NIMASA, those areas which are regulatory. Because there are some excellent reports which have been prepared and bound, which are just kept on the shelves of many people. These reports need to be digitalized and put online so that you create an e-library within the organization and create a level of security network on it so that anybody that goes to look for that file just needs to type in a word on that file like a Google, and it will tell you, give you the name of it, and then you can now begin to zero into this document. We have to digitalize because there's a limit to what a one man can know. A DG can treat 15 files, and by the time he's treating file number 15, he has forgotten what file number 1 said. But then he's going to minute it out. Then guess what? Whether you like it or not, the age of retirement will come. A lot of experts are leaving the system, and you're having younger people. So are you going to just lose their level of intelligence? So what happens is that the academics is there, so that even if you're not using it, whatever information they've gathered and written is something we can take to our universities for research, so that our young ones can begin to add to that. So the issue of digitalization cannot be underestimated right now.
Thank you so much. You just said it. The issue of digitalization is quite important, and
it's a priority right now. As a matter of fact, the government should drop everything they are doing right now and digitalize. The president has just approved NIMSA to move to Ministry of Communication. Why? Because they want to centralize the issue of data. Everyone is collecting data. You have data on BVN. You have data on driving license. You have data on NIMSA. You have data on your passport. But everybody's still collecting biometrics. So can my biometrics change by virtue of my BVN or my driver's license or my NIMSA or my whatever else or my passport? So what we're saying is that we need to basically have a situation where we can bring all our data into a central repository so that we can better control it. that you are doing it for the ID card also does not stop you from doing it from issue as it relates to climate change, to the pollution of what is happening in the area. So that I can, as a person, wake up in the morning, or somebody can say, what is happening in Nigeria? Why are we having vessels coming from Nigeria dumping waters in here? They say, oh, the ecosystem is creating this. Oh, Chevron is not drilling well, or Shell released the gas here. That's why there was a slight change in whatever. Nigeria, please, you need to check this out, because we're noticing that your ballast water is creating a problem for us here, and therefore look at it. So Nigeria does that investigation, creates a report which they can refer to. Now, with that report, that allows them to begin to know the kind of chemicals they begin to use to treat their own waters, or tell you, please treat your waters that are coming from here in this manner so that it can align with what we have here. This is what we need to do.
Thank you so much, Barrister Imatseye. You've just said it. In fact, the digital economy plays a very pivotal role as we walk into the decade of ocean science.
Yeah.
You've talked about the importance of the digital economy for us to have the big data, to be able to build our strategies better, to continue to improve on the strategies as we move on to the decade of even within the decade of action, data will play a big role for us. Now, let's look at the issue of plastic pollution in the marine body.
Yes. First of all, as you may be aware, there's a floating plastic island on the ocean, which is the size of the United States of America, which is just moving from place to place, and that is maritime pollution. And you see it on CNN when they said that very soon there will be more plastics than fishes in the sea. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of whales that have come aboard. What has killed many of them? They've thought that something they see is food, but what they've eaten is plastic, and the plastic has ruptured their stomach. So the issue of plastic affecting our food security cannot be underestimated. And plastic is not biodegradable. They will not discovered, unlike banana, you can throw a banana leaf and it is gone, or whatever else you can throw, some of them can even melt into the environment. But plastic can't. So, I believe that as a country, Nigeria, we need to change the dynamics of what Nigeria is all about. Nigeria needs to start thinking of not being known as a country, even though there's a small percentage, but it's affecting us, of Yahoo boys, 419 boys. Nigeria needs to begin to offer the world something new. We need to give them something different. And I do not see why Nigeria cannot be the plastic or the recycling capital of the world. Be it tires, be it plastics, be it vessel recycling, be it steel recycling, because what we can do, we can actually use plastic as a replacement to wood. I'll give you an example now. A lot of pallets, which are being used because you cannot carry goods, are used from wood. So what are we doing? We're actually cutting down our forests, therefore reducing the amount of CO2 and oxygen which is being released into the air, and we're making pallets into it. So why are we not in a position to take this plastic, and the technology is there, and recycle them and make them into plastic, so that we reduce the wastage of wood, so that we replace the use of wood, as the raw material of choice, and use plastic. And those plastics, when they break, they can be recycled. That is an opportunity, because right now we are also discharging. I hear Lagos discharges almost, I don't know how many tons of plastic in a day. What are they doing with it? They put them in the waste. They burn them. What is happening? By burning those plastics, you are releasing them up into CO2 into the air. You are digging up and whatever. So we can always take those plastic waste, recycle them, use them for school chairs. We can create molds for school chairs.
In fact, that is already happening in some African countries. Like
yes. So you make plastic chairs. Nowadays you can make some plastic tables. You will even know they're not plastics. So what we need to do is to say, let us save our forests. Because what we need now is that we need the carbon dioxide, we need the oxygen to begin to go back, so that we can begin. I mean, I don't know whether you realized during the lockdown, when there was a total lockdown and everything else, and factories were closing.
Yes.
Did you hear that the ozone,
yes,
which was opening, was actually closing up a little bit?
Yes, I read it.
And then the air was clearer.
Cleaner.
I just want to say,
because activities reduced.
So the animals from the forest are now coming out. That where are the human beings gone?
Yes.
So the point I'm making quite simply is that we in Nigeria need to change the dynamics of what is happening. And by changing the dynamics, we can look at the issue of plastic waste. Plastic waste is key. There's no reason why we cannot begin to take this plastic waste, recycle them, and begin to send the recycled plastic waste to other countries. Then we take it on our person. We change the talk about Nigeria, we change the dynamics of Nigeria so that people are coming to Nigeria for the right reason and not thinking Nigerians are just fraudulent people, but Nigerians are energetic and entrepreneurial.
Thank you so much. That was quite insightful. And from all you've said, it has called our attention further to say, since the call has been sectioned into different areas, including for young people, old people,
yes,
unions,
yes,
communities of
yes,
stakeholders,
yes,
I think everyone begins something new,
yes,
taking up a responsibility. But then, as you also mentioned earlier, it is quite important for governance to play the key role, yes, so that people will understand a single strategy from
and
Nigeria.
Guidelines.
Good, and then we can work within that strategy, clear cut for Nigeria in our own different spaces. Thank you so much, Barrister Imatseye.
Thank you.
It's nice talking with you. You've reviewed, and we hope that we'll have many more discussions in the various areas as we move into the decade of ocean science.
Thank you.
Viewers, thank you for being with us. That was it, a discussion, a review of some of the issues of Sustainable Development Goal, and particularly SDG 14, Life Under the Water. And discussions will continue, and we do hope that you will learn and be part of it. Thank you.